Welcome to the report for Tiger Mountain, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about a little situation that is causing much worry in the camp that supports Donald Trump, and that is the Iran war, and that includes this little black duck. So we're going to talk about that tonight on the report from Tiger Mountain. Stick around and listen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump has crossed the Rubicon. You know, we all wondered if this was going to happen. Was he going to launch an insane war against Iran? Obviously, he did an attack about 8 months ago, where he, took out the nuclear facilities or whatever that was going on there. And he has decided to, under the pressure of Israel, to launch, full-scale military air and sea attacks upon the state of Iran. Now, I'm sure if you meant there's a long history of what the country Iran is. It's Persia, ladies and gentlemen. It's kind of the Russia of the Middle East. It's the one that even George W. Bush and all those neocons didn't even want to attack because they were worried that it would be a disaster. I think there's a lot of reasons as to why Donald Trump has done this. I think the main reason is that, on some level, I think Donald Trump is blackmailed. People have said this is directly connected to the Epstein files. Now, that might be true. Obviously, there's still a tranche of Epstein files that haven't been released. Obviously, that's how, they operate. And there seem to be, other leaks that were just before the war that were kind of beginning to implicate Trump. Like they were saying, look, mate, we're going to bring you down if you don't create this war. So, for whatever you do, don't tell Mel Gibson what's happened. You know what I mean? Because, that will fit with a theory that Mel Gibson had not that long ago. And it's not as if it's even controversial that Israel started this war. Pete Hegseth came out and said that they were going to attack Iran and essentially, and Marco Rubio, that American bases were going to get hit unless they went in with them. So in a sense, whether Trump was blackmailed or whether it was just a military move and that they were going to get blowback anyway, so they thought they should take out as much of the, military, prowess of the state of Iran as they could. So I think that's, part of what's going on. I mean, a lot of people who were formerly on Team Trump, are asking questions. And look, I would consider myself one of those. I still like Donald Trump. I still think there's a lot of great things that he's done. And he is like the head of the spear of this populist right-wing movement that is beginning to revitalize Western civilization. But, he is seriously compromised by Israel. Another friend of mine, David Thrussell, who I do no-go shows with, who's in the band Snog and who writes for New Dawn magazine, he said that, when Trump had his ear nicked, he said that was a warning. They're basically saying to him, look, and that probably a deal was reached. Look, we'll blow your head off unless you give us this Iran war. So, it's either blackmail. Also, Trump has a lot of ties with Jewish investors like the Adelsons, like Allison, and a number of others. And he has a number of, famous neocons that support him, like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and Alan Dershowitz. These are all Israeli agents. This is a disaster. And, I always knew it wouldn't be good. But, it took me, I think, until petrol got up to around 260, that I literally thought in my own head, fuck Donald Trump. You know what I mean? This is hard for me to say it too, because, this is somebody, I've been a fan of Donald Trump since when he first came down those, I was a fan of him before then, but when he first announced his presidency in around late 2015, and then I went to Bali in around March, April 2016, and I wrote an essay for the alt-right, for Alternative Right magazine, that I predicted Donald Trump would win when I heard the phrase "Make America Great Again," and I heard the basic premise he was running on, which was mostly a nationalistic and America first. This is what we expected. We expected America first, and one of the things Donald Trump ran on was no more of these kind of wars. And yet here he is, conducting almost the most disastrous one of all. You know what I mean? It hasn't been yet, but the Iran war, particularly if they send in ground troops, will be an even more a bigger calamity than the Iraq war and the war in Afghanistan and whatever the hell the Israelis have been doing in Syria and in Libya. All these wars are for Israel. Let's be honest. You've got 9/11. That was deeply suspicious. You got Lucky Larry Silverstein. taking out the insurance about 2 or 3 months before the event, and then making billions of dollars when the thing came down. There was foreknowledge from Mossad. I don't know whether these were legitimate terrorists or attacking the building, or whether they were agents, or whatever it is. 9/11 is deeply suspicious, particularly in relation to Building 7. You've got the 2 twin towers that collapse. Then you've got Building 7. I mean, how did Building 7 collapse? It's just a nonsense. So, and you've got, interestingly, you have mainstream figures like Tucker Carlson, you've got Candace Owens, and you've got a whole bunch of others, obviously Nick Fuentes and, that whole crew, that are very anti-Israel. They're all turned on Trump. And, I think you have to take it. This is the thing that they've really wanted him to do. You know what I mean? And, I see it as a dialectic. I see that the left side of politics is the globalist side. That's the side that promotes mass immigration. It promotes woke, promotes the destruction of the family, it promotes the LGBT and trans agendas, all that stuff. That's the left side of the agenda that's attacking Western civilization. And then you've got the other side, which is the Zionist side, which is that our Western countries have to support the genocidal state of Israel, which is why do we support the state of Israel? I've never heard a decent reason why we do that. We don't get any resources from them. They don't give us any money. In fact, they take money from us. They shame us and call us anti-Semitic if we dare question it. It's just ridiculous. And it's not as if if it were to be seen objectively, it's probably the most rogue and dangerous state on the face of the planet that's constantly at war with its neighbours, and that's also actively committing genocide in front of everybody's iPhones who's had an iPhone inside Gaza or Lebanon or anywhere else, any one of their neighbours. So the whole thing is a disaster. But, it's interesting, though, because it's creating a situation where, you see a unity between the far left and the far right who both hate Israel. And I would consider myself on the right version that dislikes Israel, so in a way, this war is bringing this kind of mistrust of Israel to the core, to the point where it's going to maybe be difficult in America for politicians to get elected who support Israel. Obviously, the majority of them, under Trump and also under Biden, are blackmailed or owned. And and AIPAC and the power of AIPAC and stuff. So this is going to continue, at least to some extent. But I think you are going to begin to see, a lot more people, in power in the United States who don't like Israel. More Thomas Massey's, and I don't know what the left-wing version of Thomas Massey is. And you're seeing people like Joe Kent, who was on Tucker Carlson recently, resigning. He was the whole thing with the Strait of Hormuz is a disaster, and it can have incredible global side effects where it will create famine. Obviously, in third world countries, it's going to create famine where the price of energy is going to skyrocket. But it could even create COVID-style situation living in our Western countries, which, of course, ties into the globalist agenda. Because I call it the Globo-Zio agenda. It's like Globo is the left, the Zionist is the right, and together it's, all about fucking basically everybody who is not, in Israel, and a few other people who partner with them. It's a disaster, I think, for humanity, this war. It's definitely the worst thing Donald Trump has ever done. But, I do think to some extent, if he's blackmailed, he has no choice. You know what I mean? He has to do it. Or if him or his family is threatened, he might have no choice. I think you've got to try and see it from Donald Trump's perspective. And also, too, another interesting thing to note is if you are blackmailed, say Donald Trump is blackmailed and that's why he's doing it. Well, wouldn't you want to kind of like actually double cross the person who's blackmailing you? Because if you were being blackmailed by somebody, you would fucking hate them for stooping to that level to control you. So, I hope, he does a Hyman Roth, which is, in Godfather Part 2. I don't know if you remember that. In most of Godfather, the main villain of Godfather Part 1 and Godfather Part 2 is Hyman Roth, who's a Jewish gangster who, is behind the original attempt upon the Don's life, which eventually does kill him, and then, of course, the attempt upon Michael Corleone's family. And at the end of Godfather Part 2, Hyman Roth is betrayed. But for the majority of Godfather Part 2, Michael Corleone says that, Hyman Roth is our greatest ally, and I want everyone to hear that because, as the old saying goes, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I can only hope Donald Trump is doing something like that. And if you look at the fact that the other country that's actually doing okay out of this is Russia and Putin, who's also fighting the Globozar cabal over in Ukraine, because this is another war created by the same people. It's very interesting. So I think we're headed into a period of great geopolitical instability, but I hold hope that something good will come out of it if Trump is fully compromised. I'm sure it's due to something like blackmail or some direct threats on his life or the life of his family. So I still believe in Trump in many respects, but obviously on this issue, it's been a disaster. And I can see right now even he wants out. And he's also trying to bring peace and to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And what does Israel do? Goes and attacks Lebanon. I mean, it's extraordinary. Israel is clearly the most dangerous country on the face of the earth. And it could it's trying at the moment to bring the world into a World War III type situation. But even worse than that, it could lead to a kind of biblical Armageddon. And of course, there are Christian nationalists that support this. So that's my little analysis. It was awful to say fuck Trump, as a Trump supporter. But when I saw petrol at 260, 270, I couldn't help the thought entering my head. And it's gone down to 225 at the moment. But, you got the global, the GCC countries, like Bahrain and Dubai, they're under attack. The whole thing is an absolute disaster. And what's sad about it too is this will wreck Trump's legacy. You know what I mean? This is, I imagine, why he probably never wanted to do it. And he's only doing it because he's blackmailed, because it will wreck his legacy, because it will cause economic harm around the world, including in America. And that won't be good for anybody. I know someone like Sam still believes, that things will turn out well and that Donald Trump is just trying to control basically the globe's oil supply. And maybe that's true. Maybe things will still work out well. Obviously, the die has been rolled, though. So we just have to wait and see. And hopefully, we will see a good result in one way or another. But we are in for rocky times ahead. And that's the report from Tiger Mountain for this week.